The cage was warm because her body was burning. Elena Graymore knelt on stone worn smooth by 100 other bodies before hers, her wrists circled by iron that had learned the shape of her bones over 3 days of captivity. 3 days since they had caught her stealing bread from the winter stores. 3 days of silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that screamed from inside her throat and had nowhere to go. She pressed her palm against her belly, feeling the strong kicks beneath her ribs that only she knew about. 7 months along, the child of a bastard prince who had taken her in the dark after a hunt, then disappeared into his own ambitions. No one would believe her if she told them. No one would care. But that was the point, wasn't it? That was why she had planned this moment down to the last detail. That was why she had let herself get caught. The dungeon door groaned open. Elena did not look up. She had learned long ago that looking up only invited more pain, more attention, more of the casual cruelty that came with being an Omega without voice. Instead, she kept her eyes on the stone floor and waited. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, the gait of someone accustomed to obedience. A man powerful enough that the very air seemed to shift in his presence. The scent reached her before anything else. Cedarwood, winter rain, and underneath it all, the acrid tang of old blood and older guilt. She raised her eyes. Alpha King, Theron Ashbourne, stood in the threshold, and the torches seemed to dim in his presence. He was tall, broad-shouldered beneath a coat of iron-gray fur, his hair the color of ash over a dead fire. But it was his eyes that held her, silver blue, luminous as moonlight on water, and drowning in something she recognized because she carried it too. Regret. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to the chains to her trembling hands. His jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice was gravel and winter wind. Release her. The guard who had followed him stepped forward. Sire, she was caught stealing food. The winter stores are meant for— I know what she was caught doing. Theron stepped into the cell, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. I said, release her. Now. The chains fell away, like they had never been real at all. But Elena did not run. That was what surprised him most. The guard unlocked the iron, and it clattered to the stone with a sound like a death knell. The Omega woman remained on her knees, unmoving, her dark eyes fixed on some point beyond the walls. She was thin, dangerously thin for someone so heavily pregnant, her collarbone sharp enough to cut glass, her wrists marked with deep red lines where the chains had bitten. But there was something else, a luminescence beneath her skin, barely visible in the torchlight. Theron had seen it only twice before in his lifetime, both times on people who were dead within the year. The mark of the Pathfinders, those rare Omegas born with the gift of reading fate itself. You can leave, he said quietly. His voice was softer now, almost gentle. You're free to go. She did not move, did not make any sound. He had heard the servants whisper about her muteness, the way she communicated only in gestures, and the rare strangled sounds that came from a throat that had been burned too young. Now, watching her shoulders rise and fall with each careful breath, he understood. Not all silence was emptiness. Some was survival. He crouched before her, deliberately lowering his power so he would not overwhelm her senses. What is your name? Her lips moved silently. Elena. Elena. He held out his hand. You're free, Elena. You can leave the dungeons, leave the castle if you wish. She did not take his hand. Instead, her gaze traveled to his face, lingering on the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. A wound from the rebellion 5 years ago, when he had chosen mercy over massacre, and his own people had called him weak for it. 300 of them had died anyway, civilians left behind when he ordered the retreat. The ones he did not save always haunted him more than the ones he did. Her hand came up slowly. She did not take his fingers. Instead, she touched the scar with a gentleness that made something in his chest fracture. Her fingertips traced the ridge of old tissue, and Theron felt his breath catch. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with desire. It was recognition. And then the light came, silver and blue, erupting from her skin like dawn breaking over a frozen lake. Theron gasped as the world tilted sideways, as Elena's power flooded through him without permission or warning. He was no longer in the dungeon. He was standing on a battlefield 5 years past, smoke thick in his lungs, the screams of the dying echoing in his ears. The Battle of Ironhold. He saw himself as he had been then. younger, harder, not yet hollowed out by guilt. He watched himself make the calculation. 500 soldiers under his command, surrounded by enemy forces 5-1, no supplies, no reinforcements. The choice was simple and terrible. Retreat now and save the soldiers, or stay and lose everyone. Stay and lose the 300 civilians sheltering in the town behind them. He watched himself give the order, fall back, evacuate the troops, leave the civilians. He watched Marcus die. 8 years old, brown hair, gap-toothed smile. The boy had been holding his mother's hand when the enemy poured into the town square. Theron had memorized his face along with all the others. 300 faces, 300 names. He carried them like stones in his chest. The vision shattered. Theron found himself back in the dungeon, on his knees, Elena's hand still resting against his scar. She was glowing, silver light pouring from her skin, and her eyes were full of tears. She had seen everything, felt everything, lived his worst moment as if it were her own. And when she pulled her hand away, he saw something in her expression that broke him more than any condemnation could have: understanding. She did not judge him for his choice. She understood what it meant to make an impossible decision and live with the consequences. A guard appeared at the doorway. "Sire, there is a messenger from the Eastern Territories, the rebel encampment. They have taken Coldstone Pass." Theron stood slowly, his legs unsteady beneath him. "How many?" 50 soldiers dead, sire. The rebels are marching toward the capital. They have brought someone with them, someone from the old royal line. Theron felt the familiar weight settle back onto his shoulders. The crown, the duty, the endless parade of choices that would cost lives no matter which path he chose. He looked down at Elena, still kneeling on the stone floor, still glowing with that eerie Pathfinder light. "See that she is given quarters in the castle," he said to the guard. "Food, clean clothes, a healer if she will allow it." He turned to leave, but felt her hand catch the hem of his coat. He stopped, looking back. She was standing now, steadier than she had been, one hand supporting her pregnant belly. Her other hand moved in shapes he did not fully understand, but her eyes spoke clearly. "Don't go." Not with words, but with the same intensity that had marked her touch. "Something waits in that direction, something that will change you." Theron had learned long ago not to believe in fate. He had learned to believe only in choices, in consequences, in the weight of a crown and the people it crushed. But standing there in the dungeon with this silent, burning woman, this Omega carrying a gift that should have been extinct, he felt the first tremor of something he had thought himself too broken to feel. Hope, or its cousin, terror. "I have to go," he said softly, "but I will return. I promise you that." She released his coat, and he saw her lips move one more time, a single word shaped in the dark. "Hurry!" The Eastern Territories were burning when Theron arrived, not from his command, from theirs. The rebels had always been a wound that would not heal. 15 years of resistance, of raids and counter-raids, of the old families refusing to bend the knee to a king they saw as too soft. Now they had made their choice. The messenger had been clear. 50 soldiers slaughtered at Coldstone Pass, the garrison overrun, and now they were marching toward the capital with what remained of the old royal bloodline behind them. Theron sat in his war tent with General Cale Ironheart at his side, studying the maps spread across the rough wooden table. Intelligence reports lay scattered among the maps, each one painting a clearer picture of what they faced. 3 factions, Cale said, pointing to marked positions on the map. Lord Varen's Ironhold survivors here in the northern passes, disciplined, organized. They have legitimate grievances, sire. We both know that. Theron said nothing. Cale continued. The Black Ridge mercenaries here, along the eastern ridge, brutal, efficient. They fight for coin, not cause. Someone is paying them well. And the third? The old bloodhouses, scattered throughout the southern approaches. They want the old ways back, the aristocracy, the hierarchy. They see your reign as an insult to their lineage. Theron lifted his flask, felt the weight of the whiskey inside, and took a long pull. The burn was familiar, almost comforting. How long before they unite? If we show weakness? Days. Cale's voice was steady, but his eyes were worried. We need to hit them hard, sire. Overwhelming force. Make an example of one faction and the others will scatter. And how many will die to make that example? Cale hesitated. As many as necessary. Theron closed his eyes. He could still see Marcus's face, still see the 300 he had abandoned. The whiskey had not drowned them. Nothing ever would. "No," he said quietly. "Sire? We do not make examples. We do not slaughter our way to peace." Theron opened his eyes and looked at his general, his oldest friend, the man who had stood beside him at Ironhold, and watched him break. "We find another way. With respect, sire, there may not be another way. The rebels have made their intentions clear. They want blood. Then they will be disappointed." Theron stood, feeling the weight of command settle across his shoulders like an old, ill-fitting coat. "Send scout teams. I want intelligence on all 3 factions. Numbers, supplies, leadership structure. I want to know who is funding the Black Ridge mercenaries and why. And if they attack before we have that intelligence, then we defend. But we do not pursue. We do not escalate." Theron met Kael's eyes. "I will not be the king who rules through fear." Kael was silent for a long moment, then he nodded. "As you command, sire." But Theron heard the doubt in his voice, heard the unspoken question. How long can mercy hold against those who see it as weakness? The scouts returned 3 days later with information that changed everything. Theron stood in his tent, reading the reports by candlelight, and felt ice water pour down his spine. The Black Ridge mercenaries were the same group that had massacred the Greymore Pack 10 years ago, the same group that had slaughtered an entire bloodline down to the last child. Or so they had thought, because one child had survived. A 14-year-old girl pulled from the snow by Theron's own hunters, her throat burned beyond repair, her voice stolen forever. Elena. And now Theron held proof in his hands. Encrypted communications intercepted from Black Ridge camps, all of them referencing someone called the Silent Patron, someone who had hired them a decade ago to kill every Pathfinder they could find, someone who was still hunting. The messages spoke of ancient bloodlines and old spirits that demanded Pathfinder deaths. Something about preventing a bridge from being built between worlds. Kael entered the tent without knocking. "Sire, we have a problem." "What now?" "One of Varen's lieutenants wants to negotiate. He is asking for a meeting under flag of truce." Theron looked up from the reports. "When?" "Dawn tomorrow. Neutral ground. Just you and him." "It is a trap." "Probably." Kael's expression was grim. "But if we refuse, we lose any chance at a peaceful resolution with Varen's faction. They are the most reasonable of the 3. Without them, the other 2 unite, and we face full civil war." Theron thought of Elena back at the castle, alone and vulnerable. Thought of the child she carried, the secret she held. Thought of the Silent Patron who had already tried to kill her once and would surely try again. "Set up the meeting," he said, "but double our perimeter guards, and if anything feels wrong, pull me out." Kael nodded and turned to leave, but Theron stopped him with a word. "Kael." The general turned back. "If something happens to me, there is a woman at the castle. Elena Greymore. She is under my protection. See that she stays safe." Kael's eyes narrowed. "Who is she?" "Someone who deserves better than this world has given her." Theron met his oldest friend's gaze. "Promise me." "I promise, sire." The meeting took place at dawn on a barren hilltop between the 2 camps. Theron rode out with only Kael at his side, leaving his guard behind as a show of good faith. The rebel lieutenant was already waiting, a thin man with hard eyes and a scar that split his lip. Behind him, the sun rose blood-red over the mountains, painting the snow the color of old wounds. They dismounted and met in the center of the hilltop. The wind cut through their cloaks, carrying the smell of smoke from distant fires. The lieutenant did not bow, did not offer his hand, simply stood there with the rigid posture of a man who had seen too much death and learned to carry it like a second skin. "My Lord Varen sends his regards," the man said. His voice was rough, unused to diplomacy. "And a message. I am listening. He wants you to know that he does not stand with the Black Ridge animals. He wants you to know that his fight is not about power. It is about justice. Justice for Ironhold." The lieutenant's jaw tightened. Muscles jumped beneath the skin. "You remember." "I remember every face," Theron said quietly. The words came slowly, each one weighted with years of sleepless nights. Every name. Marcus Coldmore, 8 years old, brown hair, gap-toothed smile. He was holding his mother's hand when they came. Rebecca Thornwood, 42 years old, baker. She made bread that fed half the town. Thomas Ashfeld, 16, wanted to be a soldier. Elena Greymore, 14, The only one I managed to save, and I was 3 days too late." He paused, meeting the lieutenant's eyes. "Should I continue? I have 296 more names. I can recite them all if you would like." The lieutenant looked away, his throat working, his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. Varen's son was among them. "Did you know that?" "I know." Theron felt the weight of it settle heavier on his chest, pressing down like a physical thing. Adrian Coldmore, 7 years old. He was Marcus's younger brother. They died together. I carry them with me, every day, every night. "Then why did you leave them?" The lieutenant's voice broke, cracked open by grief held too long. "Why did you choose your soldiers over our families?" Theron was silent for a long moment. In the distance, a crow called out, harsh and lonely. He thought about lying, about softening the truth, but these men deserved better than that. Because the tactical situation was impossible. We were surrounded on 3 sides. Our supply lines had been cut for 4 days. We had ammunition for maybe an hour of sustained combat. Intelligence reports said enemy reinforcements were 6 hours out. If we stayed to defend the town, we would have been overrun. Every single soldier would have died, and then the civilians would have died anyway, with no one left to even bear witness. He took a breath. I calculated the odds. I ran every scenario I could think of, and the only option that saved anyone was retreat. 500 soldiers survived that day because I gave the order to fall back. He paused, but I would make the same choice again, because 500 families still have fathers and sons and brothers, because sometimes the best you can do is save who you can save. The lieutenant stared at him for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed letter. "This is from Varen. He wants you to read it. He says it changes everything." Theron took the letter and broke the seal. Inside was a single page written in a rough, angry hand, but the words made his blood run cold. The Black Ridge mercenaries did not act alone at Ironhold. They had help from inside your command structure. Someone gave them intelligence about civilian locations. Someone wanted those people dead. Someone wanted you broken. Find out who, and Varen will stand down. Continue to ignore the truth, and he will burn your kingdom to ash to force you to see it. Theron looked up at the lieutenant. "Is this true?" "Varen believes it is. He has evidence, documents, testimony from captured mercenaries. He will share it all with you if you agree to his terms." "What terms?" "Investigate, publicly, hold trials for anyone found guilty, no matter their rank. And one more thing." The lieutenant's voice dropped. "The woman you pulled from the Greymore massacre, the Pathfinder. Varen knows she survived. He knows you are sheltering her. He wants her protected. The Silent Patron is still hunting Pathfinders, and she is the last one left." "How does Varen know about Elena?" "Because the Silent Patron tried to hire him to kill her. He refused. That is when he knew something larger was at work." The lieutenant met Theron's eyes. "This is not about succession anymore, sire. This is about something ancient and evil that wants Pathfinders dead. Varen may be your enemy, but he will not stand by and watch genocide." Theron felt the pieces clicking into place. The conspiracy was deeper than he had imagined, wider, and Elena was at the center of it, whether she knew it or not. "Tell Varen I accept his terms," Theron said. "I will investigate, and I will protect the Pathfinder with my life." The lieutenant nodded. "Then we have an understanding. Varen will pull his forces back from Colston Pass, but he will be watching. If you fail to deliver justice, the war continues." "Understood." The meeting ended. Theron rode back to camp with Kael, his mind racing. Someone in his command structure had betrayed him at Ironhold. Someone had deliberately engineered the massacre of 300 civilians to break him, to weaken him, to make him vulnerable. And that same someone was now working with the Silent Patron to kill Elena. Kael broke the silence. "What did the letter say?" "That I have been blind. That the enemy is closer than I thought." Theron looked at his general, studying his oldest friend's face for any sign of deception. He hated himself for it, hated that he now had to suspect everyone. "How well do you know the members of my war council?" "As well as I know myself, sire." Kael's expression was troubled. "Why?" "Because one of them is a traitor." Theron's voice was flat. "Someone gave intelligence to the mercenaries at Ironhold, someone who knew civilian shelter locations, someone who wanted them dead specifically to break me." Kael was silent for a long moment, processing. "Then who do you suspect?" "I do not know yet." Theron pulled out the reports again, studying them by torchlight. "But I keep thinking about something. The mercenaries said the Silent Patron has been hunting Pathfinders for decades. that they serve ancient powers. That takes resources, organization, someone with access to old knowledge. High Priest Aldrich has access to the archives, Cale said slowly. The old texts, the prophecies. Theron felt a chill run down his spine. Aldrich had been with him for 5 years, had advised him after Ironhold, had encouraged his mercy doctrine, claiming it was righteous in the eyes of the gods. But what if that had been manipulation? What if Aldrich had wanted him weakened, guilt-ridden, unable to act decisively? I need you to watch him, Theron said. Carefully. Do not let him know you suspect anything. But note who he meets with, what he reads, where he goes when he thinks no one is watching. You truly think it could be him? I think it could be anyone. And that terrifies me more than any army. The assault on the Black Ridge camp came 3 days later. Theron led the strike team himself, 20 of his best soldiers moving through the mountain passes under cover of darkness. They had spent 2 days studying the terrain, mapping patrol routes, identifying weak points. Speed and stealth would serve them better than numbers. They moved like ghosts through the snow. No torches, no unnecessary sound. Hand signals only. The mercenary camp sat in a narrow valley, protected on 3 sides by sheer rock faces. Only one way in, only one way out. He split his force, 10 men with him for the direct assault, 10 men with Kyle to take the high ground. The signal would be a single arrow, flaming, shot straight up into the night sky. Theron waited for the patrol pattern to repeat, confirming the timing. 30 seconds between passes. That was his window. Then he was moving, low and fast across the open ground, his men flowing behind him. They hit the perimeter at the exact moment the patrol passed. The mercenaries recovered fast. Within seconds, men were pouring out of tents, weapons drawn. Theron moved through the camp like a blade through water. Block, parry, counter. Each movement precise. He was not trying to kill, he was trying to incapacitate. But some of them would not give him that choice. The flaming arrow shot up into the sky. Kyle's signal. Then arrows rained down from the cliffs above, pinning the mercenaries, driving them into the open. Within an hour, the fighting was over. Theron stood over the mercenary commander, a broad-shouldered man with dead eyes and blood on his hands. The man was wounded, his leg broken, his sword arm useless. "Talk," Theron said. "Tell me about the Silent Patron." The commander spat blood. "Go to hell." Theron crouched down. "I have killed more men than you have seen in your lifetime. I have made choices that haunt me every night. But I have never tortured anyone." He paused. "Do not make me start now." The commander's eyes flickered with fear. "You think it is just one person? The Silent Patron is not a person. The Silent Patron is an idea, a belief. There are dozens of us, hundreds, all working toward the same goal, which is to prevent the prophecy, to stop the bridge between worlds from being born." The commander's smile was blood-stained and terrible. "The Pathfinder girl you protect? She carries the child, the one the old texts speak of, the one who will either save the world or destroy it." His voice dropped to a whisper. "The Silent Patron wants her dead before she can give birth, because if that child lives, everything changes. The old powers, the old ways, all of it swept away." Theron's hand moved to his sword hilt. "Who leads the Silent Patron?" The commander's smile widened. "Someone close to you, someone who was there at Ironhold, someone who helped arrange that massacre to break you." His hand moved to his mouth. Theron saw the motion and lunged forward, but he was too late. The man bit down on poison. The convulsions started immediately. Within seconds it was over. Theron stood slowly, his heart pounding. Someone close to him. Someone at Ironhold. Someone on his war council. Cale appeared at his side. "Sire? We are going back to the castle, now, and when we get there, I am locking down the war council until I find the traitor." "What did he tell you?" "That we are running out of time." They rode through the night, pushing the horses to the edge of endurance. Theron's mind raced with possibilities, with suspicions, with the terrible knowledge that someone he trusted had betrayed him in the worst possible way. Someone had orchestrated the deaths of 300 innocent people. Someone had hunted Elena for a decade. Someone was still hunting her, and she was alone in the castle with them. The sun was rising when they reached the capital. Theron did not stop to rest, did not stop to change out of his blood-stained armor. He went straight to the tower where he had ordered Elena housed, taking the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering in his chest. "Let her be safe. Let me be in time." He burst through the door and stopped. Elena stood at the window, bathed in the light of dawn, her hand pressed against the cold glass. Her belly was prominent now at 7 months, the child large and active within her. She turned to face him, and he saw that she was glowing again. That silver-blue light pouring from her skin, brighter than before. And when his eyes dropped to her belly, he understood. The child was showing his power, silver and gold light pulsing beneath her skin in time with a heartbeat that was not her own. Theron crossed the room in 3 strides. "Are you hurt? Has anyone come here? Has anyone tried?" She placed her hand over his mouth, silencing him. Her eyes were calm. She had been expecting him, waiting for him. Slowly, she removed her hand and reached for his. She placed his palm against her belly, and the moment his skin touched hers, the world shifted. He was in the vision space again, the place between thoughts where Pathfinders walked. But this time, he was not alone with Elena. There was a third presence, small, bright, aware. The child. Theron gasped as consciousness touched his own, small but impossibly present. It was like touching starlight, like putting his hand against the surface of a dream. The child was aware, already thinking, already choosing. Images flooded his mind, futures branching out like tree limbs, each one a different path, each one a different possibility. In one future, Elena died in childbirth. The child died with her, never drawing breath in the world. Without the bridge between worlds, the kingdom fractured into civil war. The silent patron seized power in the chaos. Within 5 years, the old ways returned. Omegas were property again. Pathfinders were hunted to extinction. In another future, Theron sent Elena away for her own safety. She survived, but alone, hunted, terrified. She gave birth in a cave in the frozen north, with no healer, no help, no one to cut the cord or clean the blood. The child grew up knowing only fear, only running, only the constant terror of being prey. In a third future, Theron tried to protect Elena, but failed. The silent patron struck during her 8th month. Assassins in the night, a blade to the belly, mother and child both gone before dawn. Theron went mad with grief. But there was a fourth future, one that glowed brighter than all the others, one where Theron and Elena stood together, bound not by duty, but by choice. United, partners. In this future, the child was born healthy and strong, protected by both parents, loved by both. He grew up learning Theron's tactical wisdom and Elena's Pathfinder sight. He learned when to show mercy and when to bare teeth. He learned to walk between worlds, between the past that haunted them and the future they were building. He became the bridge, the one who could see all paths and choose the best one, the one who could prevent tragedies before they happened, the one who could heal the rifts that had torn the kingdom apart. But this future came with a cost. It required sacrifice. It required both of them to give up safety, comfort, peace. It required them to stand together against enemies they could not see and conspiracies they could not fully understand. It required trust, complete, absolute, terrifying trust. And then the vision shifted, showing Theron something that made his heart stop. The child's true parentage, the night of conception, Prince Demon Ashbourne, Theron's half-brother, drunk and entitled and convinced that Omegas existed for his pleasure. Elena in the servant quarters, trying to make herself small, trying to become invisible. But Demon had seen her, had decided he wanted her. What followed was violence, pure and simple. There was no romance in it, no seduction, no consent, just a powerful man taking what he thought belonged to him and a terrified woman who could not scream, could not beg, could not even cry out for help because her voice had been burned away years before. Theron watched it happen and felt rage pour through him like molten iron. But he forced himself to keep watching, forced himself to see all of it, because Elena had lived through it. The least he could do was witness. And then the vision showed him what came after, the moment of conception, the tiny spark of life that began in violence and trauma. A child that should have carried Demon's bloodline, should have inherited his cruelty, his entitlement, his casual disregard for those he saw as beneath him. But something impossible happened. The child, barely a cluster of cells, already possessing some fragment of Pathfinder awareness, felt the darkness in Demon's blood, felt the wrongness, and rejected it. The vision showed the moment like a flame being snuffed out, the biological connection severing, the child reaching out across the spiritual plane, searching for someone else. Someone better. Someone who could be the father he deserved rather than the father biology had given him. And the child found Theron. Found him in his tower, drunk and haunted, staring at a list of names he had memorized. Found a man carrying guilt like armor, who blamed himself for every life he could not save, who chose mercy even when it cost him everything. The child reached across fate itself and formed a bond. Soul adoption. One of the rarest phenomena in Pathfinder history. A child choosing his own father based not on blood but on character, based not on power but on protection. The vision showed the bond taking hold, silver and gold light flowing from the child to Theron, wrapping around his heart, anchoring itself in his very soul. From that moment on, the child was his, not in the eyes of law, not in the eyes of society, but in the only way that truly mattered, in the eyes of fate itself. The vision ended. Theron found himself back in the tower room, his hand still pressed against Elena's belly, tears streaming down his face. He was shaking, had been shaking for some time without realizing it. Elena was watching him with that same calm understanding, her dark eyes reflecting the silver light that poured from her skin. She had known all of this, had lived with this knowledge for months, and she had been waiting to see what he would choose. "How long have you known?" His voice was barely a whisper, raw with emotion. She made that broken sound again, that key turning in a rusted lock. Her lips shaped words carefully, each one an effort. "Since before. Since you found me in the dungeon. Since the child reached out and called to you, I felt it happen, felt him choose you." She paused, swallowing hard. The child is demons by blood, but blood is not everything. Blood is not fate. The child saw your heart and chose it over biological inevitability. That is the power of a Pathfinder. That is what we do. We see all possible paths and choose the best one. Her hand covered his, pressing it tighter against her belly. "He chose you, Theron. Before he was even truly conscious. Before he had words or thoughts or any understanding of the world. He felt the difference between darkness and light, between cruelty and protection, between demon and you. And he chose you." Theron felt something inside him splinter and reform, felt the pieces of himself that had been broken at Ironhold begin to shift into a new configuration, not healed, not whole, but different, stronger in some ways, more fragile in others. "I would have protected you regardless," he said. "Even if there was no child, even if you had never been pregnant, what Damon did to you, I would have brought you justice for that alone." "I know." Elena's voice was soft but certain. "That is why the child chose you." "Our child," Theron said, testing the words on his tongue, tasting them, finding them strange and terrifying and somehow right. "Our child," Elena agreed, and there was no sweetness in it, no softening of the truth, only raw honesty, conceived in violence, born into a world that wants to kill us both, hunted by forces we barely understand, prophesied to either save everything or destroy it. She paused, her hand moving to rest over her heart. "And now you have to choose. Choose whether you will love this child as a king loves an heir, a piece on a board, a tool to secure succession, or whether you will love him as a father loves a son, unconditionally, protectively, even when it costs you your kingdom. Choose whether you will let me keep him safe, let me raise him as I see fit, or whether you will take him from me when he is born and mold him into the king you think he needs to be. Choose whether you trust me, trust the child, trust fate itself." The room was silent except for the sound of their breathing and the distant tolling of bells. Outside the window, the sun continued its slow climb into the sky. In the courtyard below, servants went about their morning tasks, unaware that the future of the kingdom was being decided in the tower above them. Theron looked into Elena's eyes and saw everything he needed to see, saw a woman who had survived horrors that would have broken lesser people, saw a mother who would fight like a cornered wolf to protect her child, saw a Pathfinder who could see every possible future and was still choosing to hope, saw someone who deserved better than the world had given her. "I choose you," he said. The words came easily, surprising him with their simplicity. "Both of you, not as subjects, not as tools, not as pieces to move on a board, as family, as the thing I protect above all else, even above my own life, even above my kingdom." He pulled her close, careful of her belly, careful of the precious life growing between them. "I choose to be the father the child saw when he reached across fate and chose me. I choose to stand beside you, not above you. I choose to trust you with decisions about his future, and I choose to fight anyone who tries to take either of you from me." The silver light around Elena brightened, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Or maybe it was the child's heartbeat. Or maybe, Theron thought, it was all three of them together, their hearts beginning to beat in synchronization. Elena's arms came around him, and for the first time since entering the tower, she made a sound that was not broken or painful. It was soft, almost like a sigh, almost like relief. They stood there together as the light washed over them, as the child's presence hummed between them, as the future narrowed from infinite possibilities down to one chosen path. Outside the tower, bells continued to ring. In the War Council chambers, a traitor waited. In the shadows of the kingdom, the silent patron plotted. And in the spiritual realm that Pathfinders walked, ancient powers stirred, sensing that the bridge between worlds had found his protectors. The enemy was not just mortal conspirators. The silent patron served something older, something that had been hunting Pathfinders for centuries, something that remembered when the last Pathfinder queen tried to rewrite fate and destroyed her entire kingdom in the attempt. Moira had told him fragments of the story once, years ago, when he first found Elena in the snow. The last Pathfinder queen, a woman named Seraphine, who ruled 500 years past. She had been the most powerful Pathfinder ever born, able to see not just futures, but the very threads that connected them. She had tried to use that power to prevent a war, to save her people from suffering. And she had unraveled reality itself in the attempt. The kingdom had burned. Thousands had died screaming as paradoxes tore through the fabric of existence. Seraphine herself had been lost, trapped between worlds, neither alive nor dead. Some said her spirit still wandered the in-between places, mad with guilt and rage, hunting down any Pathfinder who might repeat her mistake. The text called her the Shattered Queen, the first and last to try to control fate instead of simply read it. And now something was stirring again, something that remembered her failure and would do anything to prevent the bridge between worlds from being born, something that whispered through dreams and moved through shadows, something ancient and patient and absolutely dedicated to ensuring that no Pathfinder ever again possessed the power to rewrite the world. Theron felt Elena shiver in his arms, as if she had sensed his thoughts, or perhaps she had seen something in her own visions, something coming toward them from the distant past, something that would not stop until Elena and her child were dead. But in that moment, in that tower room, with dawn breaking over the kingdom and the future, uncertain and terrifying, Theron Ashbourne was not a king. He was not a commander. He was not a man haunted by names he could not forget. He was simply a father, holding the mother of his child, making promises he would die to keep. And for the first time in 5 years, that was enough. He would find the traitor in his council. He would expose the silent patron. He would face whatever ancient evil was hunting them. He would protect this woman and this child with everything he had, even if it meant burning the kingdom to ash. Mercy had been his shield for 5 years. But now, for the first time since Ironhold, Theron remembered what it felt like to fight for something instead of against something. He remembered what it felt like to choose hope. The War Council met at dawn, 3 weeks after Theron returned from the mountains with blood on his hands and a traitor's name on his tongue. Except he did not have a name. Only suspicions. Only the dying words of a mercenary commander who had taken his secrets to the grave. Someone close, someone at Ironhold, someone you trust. Theron sat at the head of the table in the council chamber, his fingers drumming against the dark wood. Around him sat the men and women who had helped him rule for 5 years. General Kyle Ironheart, his oldest friend, Lord Commander Voss, master of the city guard, Lady Marin, keeper of the treasury, High Priest Aldrich, voice of the old faith, and Prince Demon Ashbourne, his half-brother, who had returned from the Northern Territories 2 days ago with rumors already swirling around him. The room smelled of old smoke and older secrets. Morning light slanted through the high windows, cutting the space into sections of gold and shadow. Theron watched each face in turn, searching for tells, searching for guilt. But they were all too skilled at wearing masks. They had to be, to survive in a world where showing weakness meant death. "We have a problem," Theron said. His voice was steady, but his exhaustion showed in the shadows beneath his eyes. "Multiple problems, actually, but they all stem from the same source. The Silent Patron," Kyle said. He had been there when the mercenary commander died, had heard the same poison words, had seen the same truth dawn in Theron's eyes. "The Silent Patron," Theron agreed. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. "They have been hunting Pathfinders for at least a decade. They orchestrated the Greymore massacre. They have agents among the Black Ridge mercenaries. And they have someone here, in this room, someone who helped arrange the civilian deaths at Ironhold to break me." The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. Lord Commander Voss spoke first. "That is a serious accusation, sire. If you have evidence, produce it. If you have a name, speak it. But if this is mere suspicion based on the ravings of a dying mercenary—" "It is not mere suspicion." Theron's voice was cold. The mercenary knew things. Details about Ironhold that only someone in command would know. Timing of troop movements, locations of civilian shelters, intelligence that was given to the enemy to ensure maximum casualties. He stood, placing his palms on the table and leaning forward. "One of you gave them that information. One of you wanted me broken. One of you has been working with the Silent Patron to kill Elena Greymore and the child she carries." Demon laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "You are accusing your own war council of treason? On what grounds? The word of a dead man who had every reason to lie? On the grounds that someone tried to kill the last Pathfinder and failed." Theron turned to face his half-brother. "On the grounds that someone keeps arranging accidents and assassinations. On the grounds that someone in this castle knew Elena was pregnant before I did." "How did you know she was pregnant, brother?" Demon's voice was silk over steel. "Did she tell you? Or did you discover it some other way?" The implication hung in the air like smoke. Theron felt rage surge through him, hot and immediate, but he forced it down, forced himself to stay calm, to stay tactical. "Elena is under my protection. That is all you need to know." "Is she?" Demon stood, matching his brother's posture. "Or is she under something else entirely?" The servants whisper, "Brother, they say you visit her tower at odd hours. They say she glows with strange light. They say the child she carries is not human." "The child is mine." Theron's voice dropped to something dangerous. "And anyone who threatens him threatens me directly." "Yours?" Demon's smile was all teeth. "How interesting. I did not realize you had taken the mute Omega to your bed. When did this happen? Before or after you pulled her from the dungeons?" Kale stood abruptly, his chair scraping against stone. "That is enough, Prince Demon. You will show respect for the King's Chosen, or you will leave this council." "Chosen?" Demon's laugh was uglier now. "She is a servant, a voiceless nothing. And you want us to believe she carries the King's legitimate heir? She carries the bridge between worlds." The voice came from the doorway, soft and ancient. Moira stepped into the chamber, her walking stick tapping against the floor. The child prophesied to either save this kingdom or destroy it. And yes, Prince Demon, the child has claimed Theron as father through spiritual adoption, one of the rarest forms of Pathfinder bond. The old healer moved to stand beside Theron. "I have examined the mother. I have confirmed the bond. The child rejected his biological father and chose Theron instead. That makes him legitimate in the eyes of fate, if not in the eyes of law." Demon's face went carefully blank. His biological father. Who would that be? "That," Moira said quietly, "is not for me to say. But whoever he is, the child found him unworthy, found darkness where there should have been light, and reached across the spiritual plane to find someone better." The implication was clear. Demon's hands clenched into fists at his sides. His voice when he spoke was barely controlled. "You accuse me of rape, of fathering a bastard on a servant girl, of being so vile that even an unborn child rejected me." "I accuse you of nothing," Moira said. "I simply state facts. The child made his choice. Biology no longer matters." "It matters to the law," Lady Marin interjected. Her voice was careful, diplomatic. "If the child is not the king's biological son, then succession becomes complicated. The old blood houses will never accept a spiritually adopted heir. They will see it as weakness, as dilution of the bloodline. Then the old blood houses will learn to adapt." Theron's voice cut through the rising tension. "Or they will find themselves on the wrong side of history. I am making Elena my queen. I am legitimizing the child, and I am doing it publicly in 2 weeks' time." The room erupted. Lord Commander Voss, this is madness. The nobles will revolt. High Priest Aldrich, the old faith does not recognize spiritual adoption. We would need to convene a council. Lady Marin, the treasury cannot sustain another civil war. If the houses rebel. Kale, I will support you, sire, but we need to be smart about this. We need a plan. Demon, you are making a mistake, brother, one that will cost you everything. Theron waited for the voices to die down. Then he spoke, his words measured and deliberate. There will be a trial, a public demonstration of Elena's worth. 3 tests, as is traditional. She will prove herself to the kingdom, and when she passes, there will be no question of her legitimacy or the child's. And if she fails? Damon's smile was sharp. If she cannot prove herself? Then I will step down from the throne and name a successor who can protect her. The silence that followed was absolute. Even Damon seemed shocked by the declaration. You would give up your crown, Kale said slowly. For her. For both of them. Theron met his friend's eyes. I have carried guilt for 5 years. I have ruled through mercy because I was afraid of becoming a monster. But I am done being afraid. I am done letting others decide what I can protect and what I must sacrifice. Elena and our child are under my protection, and I will burn this kingdom to ash before I let anyone take them from me. He turned to address the full council. We have 2 weeks to prepare. The trial will take place in the Great Hall with all 3 factions present. Varen's Ironhold survivors, the old blood houses, and representatives of the common people. Elena will face 3 challenges, 1 from each faction. If she passes, she becomes queen and the child becomes heir. If she fails... He did not finish the sentence. Did not need to. They all understood what failure meant. Execution. For Elena, for the child, for the hope of peace. Dismissed, Theron said. All of you, except Kale, I need a word. The council filed out slowly, each member carrying their own calculations and concerns. Demon was the last to leave, pausing at the doorway to look back at his brother. You are choosing wrong, brother. When this is over, you will see that. Then the door closed and Theron was alone with his oldest friend. Kale waited until his footsteps faded before speaking. You cannot seriously be considering giving up the throne. I am considering keeping my word. Theron moved to the window, looking out over the city. 5 years ago, I made a choice that cost 300 lives. I have lived with that choice every day since, and I swore to myself that I would never again sacrifice the few to save the many, that I would find another way. This is not the same situation, is it not? Theron turned to face Kale. The kingdom demands I sacrifice Elena and the child for stability, demands I choose duty over love, demands I become the kind of king who can make those calculations without flinching. He shook his head. I will not do it. I will not become that man. If the price of keeping my crown is their lives, then the crown is not worth keeping. Kale was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound heavy with years of friendship and shared trauma. The men will follow you. You know that. If you ask them to protect the Pathfinder, they will do it. But Demon is right about one thing. The nobles will rebel, and if we face another civil war, more innocent people will die. Then we make sure Elena passes the trial. Theron's voice was firm. We make sure there is no question of her legitimacy, and we root out the traitor in our midst before they can sabotage us. Do you truly believe there is a traitor? I know there is. Theron met his friend's eyes. And I need you to help me find them before the trial begins, because if they strike during the ceremony, Elena and the child are both exposed, vulnerable, and I cannot be everywhere at once. What do you need from me? Watch the council. Note who meets with whom. Track any unusual communications, and for the love of all that is holy, do not trust anyone, not even me, Vin. Kale's expression hardened. Never say that. I would die for you. I know. That is why I am asking you to live for me instead, and to protect what I cannot protect while I am preparing for the trial. The general nodded slowly. Understood, sire. But there is one more thing you need to know. What? Varen has sent another message. He wants to meet with Elena, wants to see the Pathfinder for himself before the trial. He says he will not support her legitimacy until he has proof she is what you claim. Theron felt ice settle in his stomach. When? Tomorrow, at noon, neutral ground, just him and her. That is a trap. Probably. Kale's smile was grim. But if we refuse, we lose his faction's support. And without the Ironhold survivors, the old blood houses will unite against us and we face full civil war. Theron closed his eyes. Another impossible choice. Another decision that could cost lives. But this time, he would not make it alone. I need to speak with Elena. She gets to decide if she takes this risk. The tower room had changed in 3 weeks. Where before it had been sparse and cold, now it showed signs of life. Books on the windowsill, blankets on the bed, a small table with 2 chairs, evidence that Theron had been taking meals here with Elena, making good on his promise to stand beside her. She sat in one of those chairs now, her hands resting on her belly, which had grown noticeably larger. 5 months along. The child was strong, Moira had said, growing faster than normal, already showing signs of his power. Elena looked up when Theron entered, her dark eyes calm. She knew. Somehow she always knew when things had gone wrong. Theron crossed to her, kneeling so they were at eye level. "Varen wants to meet with you. Tomorrow. He says he needs proof before he will support the trial." She nodded slowly, unsurprised. Her hands moved in the sign language she had been teaching him. "What do you think?" "I think it is dangerous. I think Varen has every reason to hate me and might take that hate out on you. I think walking into his camp could be a death sentence." He took her hands in his. "But I also think we cannot win without his support, and I think you deserve to make this choice for yourself." Elena was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. Then she placed one of his hands on her belly. The child kicked, a strong flutter that made Theron's breath catch. Her lips moved, shaping words carefully. "Our son needs a kingdom to inherit, not a fractured land torn by war. If meeting Varen prevents that war, then I will meet him. You could die. I could die giving birth. I could die from an assassin in the night. I could die crossing the courtyard tomorrow morning." She met his eyes, her expression fierce despite her silence. "Death is always there, but I will not hide from it. Will not let fear decide my choices." Theron felt something shift in his chest. This woman, this survivor who had endured more than anyone should have to endure and was still choosing courage over safety, still choosing to fight. "Then I will be there with you." "No." Her hands moved sharply. "You will be here, preparing the trial, protecting the kingdom. I will take Moira and a small guard. Varen wants to see me, not you. Let him see what he is fighting for or against." "Elena, trust me." Her hands slowed, became gentle. "The way I trust you, the way our son trusts both of us." And so it was decided. At dawn the next day, Elena rode out of the castle with Moira at her side and 10 guards surrounding her. Theron watched from the battlements, his hands gripping the stone so hard his knuckles went white. Every instinct screamed at him to follow, to protect, to stand between her and any threat. But he had promised to stand beside her, not above her, had promised to respect her choices, even when those choices terrified him. Kael appeared at his shoulder. "She is stronger than you think. I know how strong she is. That is what terrifies me." The meeting place was a clearing in the forest, halfway between the castle and Varen's encampment. Ancient trees surrounded the space, their branches bare against the winter sky. Snow covered the ground in a pristine blanket, unmarked except for the tracks of deer and smaller creatures. Elena dismounted carefully, her belly making the movement awkward. Moira stayed close, one hand on her walking stick, the other hovering near the knife at her belt. The guards formed a loose perimeter, far enough to give privacy, but close enough to respond to threats. Lord Varen was already waiting. He stood in the center of the clearing, a tall man with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Beside him stood the lieutenant who had negotiated with Theron, and 2 other men Elena did not recognize. They were not armed, or rather they carried only belt knives, a gesture of good faith, or a trap with hidden teeth. Elena stepped forward, her hands loose at her sides. She stopped 10 feet from Varen and waited. The old lord studied her for a long moment. His gaze moved from her face to her belly, to the faint silver glow that emanated from her skin even in daylight. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old grief. "You are the girl from Greymoor, the one who survived when all others died." Elena nodded. "I lost a son at Ironhold. 2 sons, actually. Marcus was 8, Adrian was 7. They were in the town square when the enemy came. They died holding hands." His voice cracked on the last word. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She knew that pain, had lived it when her own family was slaughtered. "Theron says he remembers them, says he carries their names." Varen's eyes searched hers. "Do you believe him?" Elena's hands moved slowly, deliberately. Moira translated. "He remembers all of them. 300 names, 300 faces. He drinks to forget them and cannot. He wakes screaming from dreams where he saves them all and fails. He has not forgiven himself and never will. She paused, her hands continuing. But he made the only choice that saved anyone. 500 soldiers lived because he gave the order to retreat. If he had stayed, everyone would have died, including your sons. And there would have been no witnesses, no one to remember their names, no one to carry them forward. Varen's jaw tightened. You defend him. I understand him. There is a difference. Elena's hands were steady now. I understand what it means to survive when others do not, to carry guilt for being alive, to wonder if there was something more you could have done, some choice you could have made differently. And the child you carry? Varen gestured to her belly. Theron claims it is his, but rumors say otherwise. Moira stepped forward. The child was conceived through violence. Prince Demon Ashbourne is the biological father, but the child rejected that bloodline and formed a spiritual bond with King Theron instead. Soul adoption, one of the rarest Pathfinder phenomena. Varen's expression darkened. Damon, of course. He looked at Elena. Did you consent? Elena shook her head. Her hands moved in short, sharp gestures. Then you have my sympathy, and my apology for doubting. Varen's voice softened slightly. But I need to see proof, need to witness this spiritual bond for myself. If the child has truly chosen Theron, truly rejected Damon, then I will support your claim. But if this is deception, if you are using Pathfinder tricks to manipulate the king— Elena did not let him finish. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and took his hand. Before he could pull away, light exploded from her skin. The vision hit Varen like a physical blow. He gasped, stumbling back, but Elena held his hand firm. She was showing him everything. The night of the rape, the conception, the child's consciousness awakening, the moment of rejection, when the tiny spark of life felt Demon's darkness and recoiled from it. And then she showed him the other moment, the moment the child reached across fate and found Theron, found him drunk and haunted, memorizing names of the dead, found him breaking under the weight of guilt he refused to set down, found him worthy precisely because he carried that weight, because he remembered, because he grieved. The vision showed the bond forming, silver and gold light flowing from child to king, anchoring in Theron's heart, not replacing the biological connection but overriding it, choosing love over blood, choosing protection over power, choosing the father the child needed rather than the father biology had given him. The vision ended. Varen fell to his knees in the snow, gasping. Tears streamed down his weathered face. I saw them, he whispered. Marcus and Adrian. I saw them in Theron's memories, saw him memorize their faces, saw him carry them like stones in his chest. He looked up at Elena, and his expression was naked with grief. He did not forget them. He never forgot them. Elena knelt beside him, ignoring Moira's protest. Her hands moved gently. He will never forget them. That is his burden. And in its way, that is his strength. He knows the cost of every decision, feels the weight of every life. That is why the child chose him. Varen was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I will support the trial. Will stand with you when the old bloodhouses demand proof. Will testify to what I have seen here today. He stood, helping Elena to her feet. But know this, Pathfinder. If you betray that man, if you use him or manipulate him or cause him harm, I will be the first to call for your execution. Theron Ashbourne is broken, yes. Haunted, yes. But he is the best king we have had in 3 generations, and I will not see him destroyed by the same powers that took my sons. Elena nodded, her hands still. She understood. This was not friendship. This was alliance born of shared pain and mutual respect. It would have to be enough. The ride back to the castle was quiet. Moira kept glancing at Elena, her ancient eyes worried. You took a great risk, showing him that vision. You are not strong enough yet. The child is not strong enough. Elena's hands moved slowly, tiredly. It was necessary, and it worked. This time, but you cannot keep using your powers so freely. Each vision takes something from you, takes something from the child. If you continue at this rate, you may not survive the trial, let alone the birth. Elena looked out in the forest passing by, at the bare trees and the snow-covered ground. Her hands rested on her belly, feeling the child's presence like a warm coal against her palm. Then I will die doing something that matters. Die protecting what I love. That is more than most people get. Moira said nothing, but her hand found Elena's and squeezed once, understanding passing between them without words. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Theron met with representatives from all 3 factions, negotiating the terms of the trial. Elena trained with Moira, learning to control her visions, to draw on the child's power without draining him completely. And throughout it all, the castle hummed with tension and whispered speculation. The silent patron had gone quiet. No assassination attempts, no accidents, no mysterious disappearances. It worried Theron more than open attacks would have. Silence meant planning, meant the enemy was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Kyle reported back with troubling findings. Several members of the council had been meeting in secret. Messages had been sent and received through channels that bypassed official records. And Demon had been spending time in the old archives, researching something he refused to discuss. The traitor was moving, preparing, but Theron still did not know who they were or when they would strike. The night before the trial, Theron found Elena in the tower room, unable to sleep. She stood at the window, bathed in moonlight, her hands pressed against the glass. The silver glow from her skin was brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind, careful of her belly. "Are you afraid?" His voice was soft against her ear. She nodded. Her hands moved in the limited space between them. "Good. Fear means you understand the stakes, means you will not take unnecessary risks." She turned in his arms to face him. Her eyes were luminous in the darkness. Her hands moved slowly. "What if I fail? What if I cannot prove myself? What if the child—" "Then we leave. Tonight. We take horses and ride north. We disappear into the wilderness and let the kingdom sort itself out. You would abandon your crown? I would abandon the world for you, both of you." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She pulled him down into a kiss, fierce and desperate. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead against his. Her lips moved, shaping words she had been practicing with Moira. "I love you." The words were broken, barely audible, painful to produce. But they were real. They were hers. Theron felt something crack open inside him, something he had kept locked away since Ironhold, since he had learned that love meant loss and caring meant pain. "I love you too." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her scarred throat where her voice had been stolen. "I love you, and I will protect you, no matter what tomorrow brings." They stood together in the moonlight, holding each other, gathering strength for the trial that would decide their fate. Outside, the kingdom slept uneasily. Inside, a child dreamed futures that branched and twisted like tree roots, searching for the path that would save them all. The great hall filled slowly as dawn broke over the kingdom. Representatives from all 3 factions took their places in the viewing galleries. Lord Varen and his Ironhold survivors on the left, the old blood houses on the right, led by Lady Seraphine Coldmere, a woman whose family had ruled before the Ashbournes took power, and in the center gallery, the common people. Merchants and craftsmen and laborers who had no voice in traditional politics, but who Theron had insisted be present. This trial was for all of them. All of them would witness. All of them would judge. Theron sat on the throne, his crown feeling heavier than usual. Beside him stood Kyle, armed and alert. Behind them, the War Council, including Demon, whose expression was carefully neutral. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. Elena entered, flanked by Moira and 2 guards. She wore a simple dress of white and silver, her belly prominent beneath the fabric. Her hair was loose, falling in dark waves around her shoulders. She glowed with that characteristic Pathfinder light, brighter now in the dim hall. She walked slowly up the center aisle, her eyes fixed on Theron. When she reached the base of the throne, she did not kneel. Moira had advised against it. Kneeling would show submission. This trial was about proving equality, not subservience. Instead, she stood straight and tall, one hand resting on her belly, waiting. Theron stood, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "We gather today to witness a trial. Elena Greymore, last of the Pathfinder bloodline, has been chosen as my queen and my partner. The child she carries has been claimed as my heir through spiritual adoption, a bond recognized by fate itself. But there are those who doubt, those who question, and so we offer proof." He gestured to the 3 factions, 3 challenges, one from each faction present. If Elena passes all three, she will be crowned queen, and her child will be recognized as legitimate heir to the throne. If she fails even one, I will step down and name a successor who can protect her." The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Theron had not made that part public before. Now everyone understood the stakes. The first challenge. Theron looked to Lord Varen. "From the Ironhold survivors, speak your test." Varen stood, his weathered face grave. "My test is simple. Let her show us her past. Let her prove through her own memories that she has earned the right to stand beside a king. Let us see what she has survived and what she has overcome." This was the gentlest of the three challenges. Varen was offering her a chance to build sympathy, to show the court what she had endured, but it would require using her powers, draining herself before the harder tests came. Elena looked to Moira, who nodded slightly. Then she stepped forward, raising her hands. Light exploded from her palms, coalescing into shapes above the hall. Images formed, sharp and clear, visible to everyone present, and Elena showed them everything. Her childhood in the Greymore Pack, happy memories of parents who loved her, of a community that valued every member, of learning to hunt and fight and survive. Then the night of the massacre, Black Ridge mercenaries pouring into the village, killing without mercy. Her father falling with a blade in his chest, her mother screaming Elena's name as fire consumed their home. A 14-year-old girl watching her world die. The attackers finding her, one of them holding her down while another heated a brand in the fire. The searing pain as it pressed against her throat, burning away her voice, burning away her ability to scream or beg or call for help. They left her in the snow to die. Would have succeeded if Theron's hunters had not found her 3 days later, half frozen and barely alive. The images showed her recovery, showed her learning sign language, showed years of servitude in the castle, invisible and voiceless, showed the casual cruelties of a world that saw Omegas as property, and then showed the night demon found her, the rape, the violence, the helplessness of being unable to scream, unable to fight back against someone so much stronger. The hall was silent, every eye fixed on the images above. Some nobles looked away, some wept, some simply stared, confronting horrors they had pretended not to see. Elena showed them her discovery of the pregnancy, her terror, her certainty that she and the child would both be killed, and her decision to take control of her fate, to get caught stealing, to force the meeting with Theron that would change everything. She showed them the dungeon, the chains, the moment the child's consciousness awakened and called out to Theron, the moment he freed her, the moment he saw her as a person rather than a problem to be solved. And finally, she showed them the child's choice, the spiritual rejection of Demon's darkness, the bond forming with Theron, the sole adoption that made them family in the eyes of fate. The images faded. Elena swayed on her feet, exhausted. Blood trickled from her nose. Moira caught her arm, steadying her. Lord Varen stood again. His voice was thick with emotion. "The test is passed. I have seen enough. This woman has earned her place 10 times over." But Lady Seraphine was already on her feet, her expression cold. "The second challenge is mine, and I am not so easily swayed by sad stories and Pathfinder tricks." She descended from his gallery, her silk robes whispering against stone. When she reached the floor, she fixed Elena with a gaze like winter frost. "You claim this child has chosen King Theron as his father, but spiritual bonds can be faked, visions can be manipulated. Pathfinders have been known to deceive before, so here is my challenge." She gestured to Demon, who stood among the council. "Let Prince Demon approach the child. Let him attempt to reclaim his biological right. If the child truly has rejected him, truly has chosen another, then the bond will hold. But if this is deception, if you have manipulated the king with false visions and pretty lies, then the child will recognize his true father." Elena's hands moved sharply. Moira's voice rang out. "That is not a test. That is an assault. You ask me to let the man who raped me touch my child. You ask me to expose my son to the darkness he fought so hard to reject." "Precisely." Lady Seraphine's smile was sharp. "If the bond is real, the child is in no danger. But if it is false, then we deserve to know before we crown a manipulator as our queen." The hall erupted in argument. Some nobles agreed with Seraphine. Others protested the cruelty of the test. The common people shouted their opinions, their voices raised in Elena's defense. Theron stood and the hall fell silent. "No," his voice was absolute, "I will not allow it." "Then you forfeit the trial." Seraphine's eyes glittered. "And prove that you know the bond is false." Theron descended from the throne, moving to stand between Demon and Elena. His hand went to his sword. "I said no." But Elena's hand caught his arm. When he looked at her, she was shaking her head. Her hands moved. "Let him try. Let everyone see what happens when darkness touches light. Let them witness the child's choice. Elena, trust me." Her hands were steady despite her fear. "Trust our son." And Theron realized this was her choice to make, her risk to take. He could protect her from many things, but not from this, not without undermining everything they had built together. He stepped aside. Demon approached slowly, his expression unreadable. When he reached Elena, he stopped, looking down at her belly. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Regret? Longing? Or simply calculation? He raised his hand, reaching for her stomach, and the moment his fingers touched the fabric of her dress, light erupted between them. Not silver, not gold, but something dark and violent. The child's rejection made manifest, power exploding outward, throwing Demon back 10 feet. He hit the floor hard, gasping, and into the stunned silence a voice spoke. Not Elena's, not Moira's, but a child's voice, small and clear, emanating from the light around Elena's belly. "No, you are not my father. You never were. You never will be. I choose protection over violence. I choose love over blood. I choose Theron Ashbourne as my father, and no power in this world can break that bond." The hall erupted in shocked gasps and frantic whispers. A child speaking from the womb. Pathfinder power beyond anything most had witnessed in their lifetimes. Lady Seraphine stood frozen, her face pale. The second test is passed. But the third test did not come from the expected source. Instead, from the shadows near the throne, a figure emerged. High Priest Aldrich, his robes rustling, his face twisted with rage. "There will be no third test, because I am ending this farce now." He raised his hand and dark energy crackled around his fingers. Not Pathfinder power, something older, something forbidden. "I am the Silent Patron. I arranged Ironhold. I hired the Blackridge mercenaries. I have spent decades hunting Pathfinders to prevent this exact moment, and I will not allow the bridge between worlds to be born." He pointed at Elena, power gathering for a killing strike, but he never finished the spell, because Theron was already moving, sword drawn, closing the distance faster than anyone expected. The blade took Aldrich through the chest, piercing his heart. The High Priest fell, his secrets dying with him, and in the terrible silence that followed, Theron stood over the body of his traitor, his oldest enemy, the man who had advised him for 5 years while plotting his destruction. "It is over," Theron said quietly. "The Silent Patron is dead. The trial is complete." He turned to face the hall. "Elena Graymore has passed all 3 tests. She is my queen. Her child is my heir. And anyone who challenges that will answer to me." No one spoke. No one moved. They simply stared at the king standing over a dead traitor, at the queen glowing with Pathfinder light, at the future being rewritten before their eyes. And from Elena's belly the child laughed, a sound like bells, like hope, like the beginning of something new. The binding ceremony took place that same evening. The great hall had been transformed in hours, servants clearing away violence and replacing it with symbols of union. White silk hung from the rafters. Silver chains, not of imprisonment but of binding, draped across the throne. Candles burned in every corner, their flames dancing against the darkness. Elena stood before Theron at the center of the hall, Moira at her side. She had changed into a dress of deeper silver that caught the candlelight. Her belly was prominent, impossible to ignore. The 3 factions watched from their galleries, still divided, still uncertain, but present, witnessing. Theron took Elena's hands in his, blood still drying on his sword hand. Let them see what he was willing to do. Let them understand the price of threatening what was his. "By the old ways," he said, his voice carrying to every corner, "I claim you as my equal, not as possession, not as property, but as partner." Elena's hands moved, and Moira translated. "By the old ways, I choose you as my protector. Not because I am weak, but because together we are stronger than either of us alone." Kale stepped forward, carrying a length of silver chain on black velvet. Instead of the traditional single chain, this one split, 2 equal lengths, 2 equal bindings. He wrapped one length around Elena's wrist. She wrapped the other around his, connected but not controlled, bound but not broken. "What was separate becomes joined," Moira intoned. "What was broken becomes whole. What was impossible becomes inevitable." Theron pulled Elena close. He spoke the next words directly to her, quiet enough that only she could hear. I vow to stand beside you, to trust your choices, to be the father our son chose, to be worthy of that choice every single day. Elena's lips moved, shaping words with tremendous effort. I vow to stand with you, to share your burdens, to help you carry the names you cannot forget, to be the partner you deserve, to build a kingdom where no one is voiceless. They sealed the vows with a kiss, and the child between them pulsed with light. Silver and gold washing over the hall, touching every person present. And in that light, something shifted. The bond extended outward, touching the kingdom itself. People in the galleries felt it, a sense of connection, of possibility, of a future that might be different from the past. Lord Varon was the first to kneel. My sword to your service, he said, my men to your cause, my grief to your remembrance. One by one, others followed. Not all. Some of the old blood houses left the hall, their faces tight with disapproval. But enough stayed, enough knelt, enough chose the future over the past. Demon was among those who left. He paused at the doorway, looking back at his brother. The child rejected me, he said quietly. But you? You killed a priest without trial. How long before you become the monster you fear? Then he was gone, his words hanging in the air like smoke. Elena felt Theron tense beside her. She squeezed his hand. Her hands moved slowly. He is wrong. You are not a monster. You are a man who protects what he loves. There is a difference. Is there? Aldrich was unarmed. I cut him down without hesitation. He was casting a killing spell. At me. At our child. Elena's hands were firm. You stopped a threat. That is protection. What if Demon is right? What if I am becoming what I feared? Then I will stop you. Her hands became gentle. The way you would stop me. That is what it means to be bound, to be each other's conscience, each other's strength. Theron pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. Thank you. For what? For choosing me, for trusting me, for seeing something in me worth saving. Elena pulled back to meet his eyes. Her lips moved, the words coming easier now. You chose me first, in the dungeon, when you could have walked away. You saw me when everyone else looked through me. That is why our son chose you. That is why I love you. The celebration continued around them, but they stood in their own world. Two broken people who had found each other in darkness. Two survivors who had decided to stop merely surviving and start building. Outside the hall, there would be more threats, more enemies. Demon would not go quietly. The old bloodhouses would continue to plot. And somewhere, in the places between worlds, ancient powers were stirring. Powers that had noticed the bridge between worlds was close to being born. But in that moment, with the silver chain binding their wrists and the child's presence humming between them, Theron and Elena allowed themselves to believe in possibility. To believe in a future where mercy was not weakness, where love was not a liability, where a voiceless Omega and a broken king could stand together and remake a kingdom. The binding was complete, the trial was won, and the real work was just beginning. The first contraction hit Elena 2 weeks after the binding ceremony, in the gray hour before dawn, when the castle still slept and the world hung suspended between night and day. She was standing at the tower window, watching snow fall over the kingdom, one hand resting on her belly where the child had been restless all night, moving, turning, preparing. 8 months along, close enough to term that the child would survive, but still too early for comfort. The pain rolled through her like a wave, tightening every muscle, stealing her breath. She gripped the windowsill, her knuckles going white. The child was coming, whether they were prepared or not. She felt liquid warmth between her legs, her water breaking. The child was coming now. She turned from the window, moving slowly toward the door. Each step was measured, careful. She needed to reach Moira, needed to reach Theron, needed to get to the birthing chamber before the contractions became too strong to walk through. But she made it only halfway across the room before the second contraction seized her. This one was stronger, fierce enough to drop her to her knees. She felt the child shift inside her, felt his consciousness brush against hers. Not afraid, determined. He was ready to be born, and nothing would stop him now. The door burst open. Theron stood in the threshold, still half-dressed, his sword in his hand. He had been sleeping in the adjoining chamber, close enough to hear if she needed him, close enough to protect her from any threat. Elena. He was across the room in 3 strides, his sword clattering forgotten to the floor. His hands found her shoulders, steadying her. What is wrong? What happened? She could not speak through the pain, could only press his hand to her belly and let him feel the answer. The child kicking, the muscles contracting, the inexorable process that had already begun. Theron's face went pale. Now? But you still have time. We are not ready. The child disagrees. Elena's hands moved once the contraction passed. He is coming. Now. Theron swept her into his arms, lifting her carefully. He moved through the castle like a storm, shouting for Moira, for the healers, for anyone who could help. Servants scattered before him, their faces shocked. The queen was in labor. The bridge between worlds was being born. They reached the birthing chamber within minutes. It was a room that had been prepared weeks ago, filled with clean linens and herbs and everything Moira had deemed necessary. The old healer was already there, as if she had known this moment was coming. Perhaps she had. Pathfinders were not the only ones who could read fate. Moira took one look at Elena and began issuing orders. Boil water, bring more blankets, send for Kale and tell him to double the guard around this wing, and someone fetch Prince Demon. He should be present, whether he wants to be or not. Why Demon? Theron demanded, lowering Elena onto the birthing bed. Because he is the biological father. Moira's voice was sharp. And because if something goes wrong, if the child does not survive, Damon will claim we killed him deliberately. Better to have him witness that we did everything possible. Nothing will go wrong! Theron's voice was fierce. Do you understand me? Nothing. Moira met his eyes, her expression grave. I will do everything in my power, but childbirth is always a battle, and this is no ordinary child. He carries power that should not exist, power that will fight to be born just as hard as she fights to birth him. She turned to Elena, who was breathing through another contraction. This will be the hardest thing you have ever done. Harder than surviving the massacre. Harder than enduring 10 years of silence. Harder than facing the trial. But you are strong enough. You have always been strong enough. Elena nodded, her face tight with pain. Her hands moved slowly. How long? Hours. Maybe more. First births are always long, and with a Pathfinder child there are complications we cannot predict. The hours that followed blurred together into a haze of pain and effort. Elena had known childbirth would hurt, had heard the stories, had seen other women endure it. But knowing and experiencing were vastly different things. Each contraction was a wave of agony that started deep in her core and radiated outward, consuming everything. Her muscles locked, her breath caught. Her body seemed determined to tear itself apart to bring this child into the world. Between contractions, there were brief moments of clarity. Moments where she could think, could breathe, could prepare for the next onslaught. But those moments grew shorter as the hours dragged on. The contractions came faster, harder, each one building on the pain of the last until there was no rest, only endurance, only the grim determination to survive the next wave and the next after that. Theron stayed beside her through all of it, holding her hand, wiping sweat from her forehead, whispering encouragement that she could barely hear through the roaring in her ears. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He looked terrified, she realized, during a brief moment of clarity between contractions. This man who had faced armies and made impossible choices and carried the guilt of 300 deaths was terrified of losing her. The thought gave her strength. If he believed she could survive this, then perhaps she could. Moira checked her progress regularly, her weathered hands gentle but efficient. "You are doing well," she said during one examination. "The child is positioned correctly. His head is down, his heart is strong. But he is large. Pathfinder children often are, and his power is already manifesting. I can feel it pushing against the barriers between worlds." "What does that mean?" Theron demanded, his voice sharp with worry. "It means he is fighting to be born on a spiritual level as well as physical." Moira's expression was troubled. "It means this birth is happening in multiple planes at once. The physical body struggles to emerge, but so does his consciousness, his power, his very essence. And we cannot help with the spiritual part. That is Elena's battle alone." Another contraction seized Elena before she could process the words. This one was different. Stronger, more purposeful. She felt the child move inside her, felt him descending, pressing against the opening that was still too small, still not ready. She screamed, the sound ripping from her scarred throat, broken and ragged but real, powerful. the sound of a woman fighting for her life and the life of her child. When the contraction passed, she was shaking, exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. Her body was drenched in sweat, her muscles trembling with effort. She did not know how much longer she could endure this, did not know if she had the strength to finish what had been started. Theron's face appeared above hers, his eyes fierce. "Look at me." His voice cut through her exhaustion. "You are the strongest person I have ever known. You survived a massacre. You survived 10 years of silence. You survived rape and imprisonment and standing trial before the entire kingdom. You can survive this." His hand cupped her face. "You can survive anything, and I will be here beside you through all of it. Every contraction, every push, every moment of pain. You are not alone. Do you understand me? You are not alone." Elena wanted to respond, wanted to tell him she understood, that his presence gave her strength. But another contraction began before she could, and all her focus narrowed to the single overwhelming task of enduring it. As if summoned by the intensity of her pain, the room began to glow. Silver and gold light emanated from Elena's body, from the child struggling to emerge. The air itself seemed to thicken, to shimmer with power barely contained. And suddenly Elena was no longer just in the birthing chamber. Her consciousness split, part of her still feeling the physical pain, still aware of Theron's hand crushing hers, still hearing Moira's voice giving instructions. But part of her was pulled into another space, the in-between, the place where Pathfinders walked when they read the threads of fate. In that space, she saw the child clearly for the first time. Not as a tiny body struggling through the birth canal, but as a being of pure light and possibility. He was magnificent, radiant, a small sun burning with power and awareness and determination to be born. But he was trapped, caught between worlds, unable to fully cross over into physical existence because something was holding him back. Elena looked closer and saw them. Threads, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Dark tendrils reaching from the shadows at the edges of the in-between space, wrapping around the child, anchoring him to the spiritual plane, trying to keep him from entering the physical world, trying to prevent his birth. And at the end of those threads, deep in the shadows where light could not reach, a figure waited, watching, patient, malevolent in the way only ancient things could be. Elena forced her consciousness toward that figure, ignoring the pain of her physical body, ignoring everything except the need to understand what was threatening her child. The figure stepped forward into the light, and Elena's breath caught. It was a woman, tall and ethereal, her form flickering between solid and translucent. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight and shadow. Her hair was long and silver, flowing around her like water, and her eyes were the color of mercury, reflecting everything and revealing nothing. But those eyes were Pathfinder eyes, the same gift Elena carried, the same power that flowed through Cassian. This woman was like them, or had been once, before something had twisted her into this thing that existed between life and death, between past and present. And you, Elena thought, her consciousness projecting the words into the space between them. You are the one who ordered my family killed. You are the one who has been hunting us. The woman's smile was sad and terrible, a thing that spoke of centuries of pain and madness. I am Seraphine, last Pathfinder queen before your bloodline began. I ruled 500 years ago, when the old kingdom still stood and the world was younger, and I believed I could save everyone. She gestured to the darkness around them, to the threads still wrapped around Cassian's glowing form. I was powerful, the most powerful Pathfinder who had ever lived. I could see futures branching out before me like roots of a great tree, could trace each path to its conclusion, could witness every tragedy before it happened. Her expression darkened, and I made a terrible mistake. I used my power to try to prevent a war. I changed key events. I saved lives that were meant to be lost. I rewrote fate itself because I believed I knew better, because I thought I could create a perfect future if I just made the right changes. She laughed, the sound empty and hollow, and I destroyed everything. My changes created paradoxes, contradictions. Reality itself began to tear. The kingdom I was trying to save became a wasteland. My people died screaming as the fabric of existence unraveled around them. Hundreds of thousands of souls lost because I thought I knew better than fate itself. Elena felt another contraction in her physical body, felt the child pressing harder against the barriers of flesh. but she forced herself to stay in the vision, to understand. So you kill other Pathfinders, to prevent them from making the same mistake, to prevent the bridge between worlds from being born. Seraphine's voice was anguished, raw with 500 years of grief and guilt. Your child will have power beyond anything I possessed. He will be able to change fate, to rewrite history, to prevent tragedies before they happen. And he will try, because he is good, because he wants to help, because that is what Pathfinders do. She stepped closer, her form solidifying with her intensity. And he will destroy everything, just like I did, just like every Pathfinder who has tried to use their power to control fate. The more you change, the more you break. Fate is not meant to be controlled. It is meant to unfold naturally. And a child with his power cannot resist the temptation to interfere. I have seen the timelines. I know what he will become. I know the devastation he will cause. Her mercury eyes pleaded for understanding. Let me end this now. Let me spare the world from another catastrophe. Let me spare your child from the burden of destroying everything he touches. It will be painless, quick, a mercy for everyone. Elena felt rage surge through her, hot and immediate. You want to kill my son because you failed, because you made mistakes and cannot live with them. So you hunt down every Pathfinder who comes after you, convinced they will repeat your errors. They will, Seraphine insisted. They always do. Power corrupts, foresight tempts, and those with the ability to change fate inevitably try to do so, no matter the cost. You have seen one possible future. Elena's thoughts were firm despite her pain, but there are infinite futures, infinite choices. You do not know what he will become because he has not chosen yet, because he has not lived yet, because he deserves the chance to prove you wrong. He does not, Seraphine said flatly. No one deserves the chance to destroy worlds. Better to end one life than to risk billions. Then why not let him make that choice himself? Elena challenged. Why not teach him about your mistakes instead of killing him to hide them? Why not show him what happens when Pathfinders try to control fate so he learns not to do it? Because I cannot. Seraphine's form flickered, becoming translucent. I am trapped here, locked between worlds. I cannot leave this place, cannot teach, cannot guide. I can only watch and wait and try to prevent the next catastrophe before it begins. Then let me give you a choice. Elena reached for the dark threads, the ones wrapped around Cassian's glowing form, felt them solid under her spiritual touch, despite being made of nothing physical. You can stay trapped here forever, alone with your guilt and your fear and your certainty that the worst will happen. Or you can let go, release the child, accept that fate unfolds as it will, accept that you cannot control what others do with their power, and find peace. There is no peace for what I have done. Seraphine's voice broke. There is no forgiveness, no redemption, only eternal witnessing of my failure. Elena thought of Theron, of the names he carried like stones in his chest, of the guilt that drove him to drink and to mercy and to impossible choices, of the way he had learned to live with his burden instead of being crushed by it, of how she had helped him understand that carrying guilt did not mean drowning in it. There is no forgiveness, Elena agreed, only acceptance. You cannot change what you did. The people you failed are still dead. The kingdom you destroyed is still gone. But you can choose what you do next. You can choose to stop the cycle of violence you started. Or you can choose to perpetuate it by killing an innocent child who has done nothing wrong. She pulled gently on the threads, not trying to break them but to offer connection. You wanted to save everyone. That is why you broke reality. Because you cared too much, tried too hard, refused to accept that some tragedies cannot be prevented. That is a noble failure, a tragic one. But it does not have to define all that comes after. Seraphine stood frozen, her mercury eyes wide and wet with tears that had not fallen in 500 years. The threads in her hands trembled, loosening slightly around Cassian's light. He will make mistakes, she whispered. He will cause pain. All Pathfinders do. All people do. Yes, Elena agreed, and he will learn from them. And he will do better, because he will have parents who understand burden, who understand guilt, who will teach him that power is not about control. It is about protection. It is about witnessing and helping and carrying weight together. Another contraction tore through Elena's physical body, so intense she nearly lost her grip on the vision. She felt herself being pulled back toward flesh and blood and pain, felt the moment of birth approaching rapidly. But she held onto the vision long enough to see Seraphine's face change, long enough to see 5 centuries of grief and rage and guilt begin to crack like ice under spring sun. "I am so tired." Seraphine's voice was small, lost, the voice of someone who had been fighting for so long she had forgotten why, so tired of fighting, so tired of watching, so tired of being afraid. "Then let go." Elena reached out with her spiritual hand, offering connection instead of conflict. "Find your peace. Let us find ours. Let the future unfold as it will. Trust that maybe, just maybe, some people learn from the mistakes of those who came before." Seraphine looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Her form flickered between solid and transparent, between the ancient queen she had been and the broken ghost she had become. Then slowly, trembling like someone taking their first steps after years of paralysis, she reached back. When their hands touched, light exploded through the in-between space, silver and gold and mercury all blending together, creating something new, something that had never existed before. The dark threads dissolved like smoke, the barriers fell away, and Seraphine's form began to change, not fading, but transforming, becoming lighter, becoming free. "Thank you." The ancient queen's voice was fading but no longer hollow, no longer broken. "Teach him well. Teach him that some tragedies cannot be prevented, only endured, only carried forward. Teach him that the greatest power is not changing fate, but helping others survive it." Then she was gone, not into darkness but into light, released at last from 500 years of self-imposed punishment, free to find whatever peace awaited those who had failed catastrophically, but learned to let go of their need to control what came after. And Elena was pulled back into her body with violent, overwhelming force. The physical world slammed into her, pain, overwhelming, all-consuming pain, but different now, purposeful. The child was moving, descending, ready to be born. "Push," Moira commanded. "Now, Elena, you must push." Elena bore down with everything she had, felt her body tear, felt blood and fluids and the overwhelming pressure of a life forcing its way into the world. She screamed, the sound broken and ragged from her scarred throat, but real, powerful. The sound of a survivor refusing to be silent anymore, even in the extremity of pain. Theron's hand crushed hers. His other hand supported her back, keeping her upright when her strength wanted to fail. He was saying something, words of encouragement or prayer, or simply her name repeated over and over like a talisman. She could barely hear him through the roaring in her ears, but she felt him, felt his presence like an anchor keeping her tethered to the physical world when the spiritual threatened to pull her away entirely. "Again," Moira said, her voice cutting through everything else with the authority of someone who had delivered 1,000 babies and knew exactly what this moment required. "One more push. He is crowning. I can see his head. Dark hair like yours, Elena. He is almost here. One more. You can do this." Elena gathered her remaining strength, gathered every ounce of determination that had kept her alive through a childhood massacre, through 10 years of servitude, through rape and imprisonment and trial. Gathered the love she felt for this child who had chosen them, for this man who had chosen her, for this impossible future they were building together. She thought of everyone who had brought her to this moment. Her parents, dead but not forgotten, who had taught her to survive before they were taken. Theron, broken but healing, who had seen her when everyone else looked through her. Seraphine, finally at peace after 500 years of torment, who had let go so this child could be born. And the child himself, Cassian, fighting so hard to enter this world, to fulfill whatever destiny awaited him. She pushed with everything she had, pushed past pain, past exhaustion, past fear, pushed with the kind of primal strength that only comes in moments of absolute necessity. And the world changed. The child emerged in a rush of blood and light. Moira caught him, her ancient hands steady despite the surge of power that crackled around the infant like summer lightning. He was small, impossibly small for the force he represented, but perfect in every way that mattered. 10 fingers, 10 toes, eyes already open, already aware, already looking for his mother. Those eyes were the color of starlight, silver traced with gold, luminous and ancient and impossibly young all at once. Exactly as the visions had shown. They fixed on Elena immediately, and in them she saw recognition, love, trust, the bond that had formed months ago in the spiritual plane made manifest in the physical world. He did not cry. Instead, he made a sound like a bell ringing, like crystal chiming, like something pure and clear and full of all the promise the world could offer. It was a sound of arrival, of victory, of a battle won by both of them together. Moira worked quickly, efficiently, clearing his airways, cutting the cord that had sustained him for 8 months, checking that everything functioned as it should. Her weathered face was alight with something that might have been wonder. "In all my years," she murmured, "I have never felt such power from a newborn. He is truly something new, something the world has not seen in centuries." She wrapped him in clean linen, soft and white, then placed him on Elena's chest, skin to skin, mother and child, the bond that transcended blood and biology and even prophecy, the bond that would shape who he became. Elena looked down at her son and felt everything else fall away. The pain receded, the exhaustion became meaningless, the fear dissolved. All of it was replaced by a love so fierce and overwhelming it nearly stopped her heart. This small, perfect life that she and Theron had fought so hard to protect. This child who had chosen them as much as they had chosen him. Theron leaned over them both, his face wet with tears he did not bother to hide or apologize for. "He is beautiful." His voice cracked with emotion held too long. "So beautiful, perfect in every way." The child turned his starlight eyes toward Theron, tracking the sound of his voice with uncanny precision for someone minutes old. One small hand reached up, fingers spreading instinctively, seeking connection. Theron offered his finger, and the infant grasped it with surprising strength. And in that touch, Elena felt the bond solidify fully. Father and son, not through blood, but through choice, through love, through recognition, through every impossible thing they had endured to reach this moment. The soul adoption that had begun in the spiritual realm was now complete in the physical one. "What is his name?" Moira asked softly. "Every child born must be named within the first hour, lest fate claim them." Elena looked at Theron. They had discussed names over the past weeks but had never decided, had been too afraid to name him before he was safely born, too afraid to tempt fate. But now, holding him, feeling his weight and warmth and perfect realness, the name came to her clearly. Her lips shaped the word, Cassian. Theron smiled through his tears. Cassian Ashbourne, bridge between worlds, son of Elena and Theron, born of darkness and light, born of trauma and love, born to change everything or change nothing as he chooses. The door opened. Demon stood in the threshold, his expression unreadable. He had been summoned as Moira requested, made to witness the birth, made to see that they had not tried to kill the child or manipulate the outcome. He walked slowly into the room, his eyes fixed on the infant. When he reached the bedside, he stopped, staring down at the child who carried his blood but rejected his claim. Cassian looked up at Damon with those impossible eyes, and something passed between them, some communication beyond words. Elena felt it through her bond with the child, felt Cassian's consciousness reaching out, not with hate or fear, but with something that might have been pity. "You could have been my father." The words appeared in Elena's mind, in Theron's, perhaps in Demon's as well. "You could have been the one I chose, but you made different choices, and so I made mine." Demon's face worked, emotions warring across his features. Rage, grief, something that might have been regret. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "I was drunk. It was not an excuse, merely the truth. I convinced myself it was different than it was, that she wanted—" He stopped, unable to finish. Elena said nothing. She had no words for him, no forgiveness to offer. But she did not hate him either. She simply felt nothing. He was the past. Cassian was the future. "I cannot change what I did," Demon continued. "Cannot take back that night, but I can—" He swallowed hard. "I can leave, remove myself from the succession, make sure my presence does not taint the child's claim." "That would be wise." Theron's voice was cold. "But not because you need to atone, because we do not trust you near our son." Demon nodded slowly. He looked at Cassian one more time, his expression naked with loss. Then he turned and walked from the room. Moira finished her examinations, checking both Elena and Cassian for complications. "You are both healthy. The birth was difficult but successful. You will need rest, weeks of it, and the child will need constant care. Pathfinder infants are fragile in ways normal children are not. I will care for him." Elena's hands moved slowly. Her voice shaped the words as well. "We both will." Moira nodded. "Then I will leave you. You have earned this peace." The old healer gathered her supplies and departed, leaving Elena and Theron alone with their son. The room was quiet, except for the soft sounds of Cassian breathing, already asleep, exhausted from the battle of being born. Theron climbed onto the bed beside Elena, careful not to jostle her or the child. They lay there together, the three of them, forming a unit that felt more complete than anything Elena had experienced. "You did it." Theron's voice was full of wonder. "You brought him safely into the world, fought an ancient queen on the spiritual plane while giving birth. You are the strongest person who has ever lived." "We did it." Elena's hands moved against his chest. "You gave me the strength to fight, gave him a father worth fighting for. What happens now? Now we rest, now we heal, now we teach him everything we learned the hard way." Elena looked down at Cassian, at his small face relaxed in sleep. "We teach him that power is not about preventing every tragedy. It is about helping people survive them, helping them carry the weight. That is what a bridge between worlds should do." Theron kissed her forehead. "Then that is what we will teach him." They fell silent, watching their son sleep. Outside the window, dawn was breaking properly now, painting the snow-covered kingdom in shades of gold and pink. A new day, a new beginning, a world that had changed simply because one child had been born. The trials were not over. Demon would leave that day, riding north into exile. The kingdom would need time to adjust to its new queen and unusual heir. There would be resistance from some quarters, acceptance from others. There would be mistakes and hard choices and moments of doubt, but they would face it all together. A king who had learned that mercy required wisdom, a queen who had found her voice, and a child who would bridge the gap between what was broken and what could be built. That was enough. That was everything. That was the future they had chosen, the one they had fought for, the one they would protect with their lives. Cassian stirred in his sleep, making that soft bell sound again. And in that sound was every possibility, every hope, every chance at something better. The bridge between worlds had been born, and the world would never be the same. 1 year passed like a breath and an eternity. The seasons turned. Snow melted into spring, spring bloomed into summer, summer faded to autumn, and winter returned to paint the kingdom white once more. In that year, everything and nothing changed. Cassian grew from infant to child, developing faster than normal children, but slower than his power might suggest. He learned to walk at 8 months, stumbling between his parents with determined steps. He spoke his first words at 10 months, not mama or dada, but whole sentences that made Moira's eyes go wide. "I see you. I know you. I choose you." His Pathfinder gifts manifested early but gently. He glowed when happy, dimmed when sad, flickered when confused. He could sense emotions before people spoke them, could read the tenor of a room just by entering it. But he did not see catastrophic futures or rewrite reality. He simply witnessed, as Elena had taught him. And he remembered. That was perhaps his greatest gift. He remembered everything anyone told him, every story, every name, every face. At 1 year old, he could recite all 300 names that Theron carried, could tell you Marcus was 8 and liked wooden swords, could tell you Rebecca made bread that smelled like honey, could tell you Thomas wanted to be a soldier like his king. He bore witness to the dead, not to resurrect them or change their fates, but simply to ensure they were not forgotten. Elena's voice continued to strengthen, though it would never be perfect. The scar tissue remained, a permanent reminder of childhood trauma. But she could speak now, could address the court, could tell her son she loved him in words he could hear. She still used sign language when tired, still communicated through gesture when emotion overwhelmed her. But the silence was no longer forced. It was chosen. She proved to be a formidable queen. The first case she adjudicated alone involved 2 merchant houses fighting over trade rights. She had listened to both sides argue, watched them puff themselves up with self-importance, and then quietly redistributed their monopolies to smaller merchants who had been locked out. When they protested, she had simply said, "You came here to test the voiceless queen. Now you know. I have teeth." The court had erupted in applause. Theron had not touched alcohol in a year. The withdrawal had been brutal for the first months, his hands shaking, his nightmares worse without the numbing effect of whiskey. But Elena had been there, holding him through the worst of it, reminding him that he could feel everything and still function. That sobriety was not weakness, but strength. He still carried the 300 names, still woke sometimes from dreams of Ironhold, but he had learned to carry the weight without drowning in it, had learned that remembering the dead was not the same as being destroyed by them. Lord Varen became their most stalwart ally, a man transformed by grief into purpose. He moved his household to the capital, wanting to be close to the child who remembered his sons, would visit the nursery once a week just to hear Cassian say their names. Marcus, Adrian, your boys, I remember them. It was a healing neither of them had expected to find. Kael and his soldiers formed a protective ring around the young prince, teaching him about loyalty and brotherhood and the weight of command. Cassian absorbed it all with those starlight eyes, filing away lessons he would need when he was older. The kingdom adjusted to its new order slowly but steadily. Some nobles never accepted Elena, never acknowledged that a voiceless Omega could rule. They left for other lands, taking their prejudices with them. But others stayed, drawn by the stability, by the genuine partnership between king and queen, by the proof that power did not have to mean domination. And on Cassian's first birthday, they held a ceremony. Not a coronation. He was too young for that. But a presentation, a moment for the kingdom to see its future and to make their choice. The great hall filled with representatives from every corner of the realm, merchants and farmers alongside nobles, common soldiers alongside generals, a true gathering of the people. Elena stood with Theron on the dais, Cassian in her arms. He was small for his age but alert, his starlight eyes surveying the crowd with that impossible awareness. And then, as the ceremony reached its culmination, he spoke. His first public words, clear and deliberate, carried by Pathfinder power to every ear in the hall. I see futures. His voice was small but steady. Many futures. Some good, some bad. I cannot stop the bad ones, cannot change them, cannot make them go away. He paused, and Elena felt his consciousness brush against hers, seeking reassurance. She sent back waves of love and support. But I can help you survive them, can help you carry them, can remember them with you so you are not alone. He looked directly at Lord Varen. Like my father carries your sons, like my mother carries her family. We remember, and that makes us strong. That makes us able to help each other. The hall erupted in whispers, but they were awed whispers now. A child barely 1 year old, speaking with such clarity, offering not to save them from suffering but to witness it with them. Lord Varen was the first to kneel. My sons are remembered, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Their names are carried. That is what I needed. That is what heals. One by one, others followed. Not everyone. Some walked out, unable to accept this strange new world. But most stayed, most knelt, most recognized that this child was offering something more valuable than preventing tragedy. He was offering shared remembrance, shared witness, shared humanity. That night, after the guests had gone and the castle had settled into sleep, Elena sat in the nursery with Cassian. He was tired but still awake, his small hands playing with the silver chain she still wore around her wrist from the binding ceremony. Her voice was soft but clear. You spoke well today, made them understand. Cassian looked up at her with those ancient young eyes. You taught me, both of you. Father carries names, you carry silence, I carry futures. We are weight-bearers. That is what family means. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, that is exactly what it means. Will it be hard, being the bridge? Yes. Some days it will feel impossible. You will see suffering you cannot prevent. Will witness pain you cannot heal. How do I survive it? You do not do it alone. Elena pulled him close. You share the burden. You let us help carry the weight. And you remember that survival is not weakness. It is the greatest strength there is. Cassian settled against her chest, his breathing slowing. Theron appeared in the doorway, watching them with an expression of fierce love and protection. He crossed the room silently, sitting beside them. His arm came around Elena's shoulders. 3 people bound by choice and trauma and hope. What happens next? Theron asked softly. Whatever comes. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. But we face it together. Together, Cassian murmured, already half asleep. The future was not written, not controlled, not predetermined. It would unfold as it would, shaped by infinite choices. And Cassian would witness it, would help where he could, would remember when he could not. That was enough. That was everything. Outside, the kingdom slept. Inside, a family kept watch. Not over a prophecy or a weapon, but over a child who would grow to be whatever he chose to be, who would make mistakes and learn from them, who would carry weight and share burdens and help people survive what could not be prevented. The bridge between worlds had been born, and the real work, the beautiful, terrifying, endless work of living, had only just begun.